What looks calm at first can explode without warning, especially when live cameras are involved. Before we dive into the video, please like, subscribe, and comment. Now let's get back to the video. What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actresses walks into what she believes will be a harmless, routine interview, only to realize too late that the host across from her came prepared to tear her apart on live television? What unfolded between Scarlett Johansson and Joy Behar on The View didn't just surprise viewers, it stunned the entire daytime TV world and sent shockwaves across social media within minutes. By the end of this confrontation, security would be called, tempers would flare, and reputations would be tested in real time, all while the cameras kept rolling. This wasn't a minor disagreement or a tense exchange of opinions. This was a textbook example of how quickly a controlled studio environment can turn hostile when egos clash and someone decides to prioritize spectacle over conversation. What started as a standard promotional appearance rapidly spiraled into one of the most uncomfortable and explosive moments daytime television has seen in years. The morning itself began like any other taping at the View studio. Scarlett Johansson arrived early, calm and prepared, guided by her publicist, who had carefully outlined what was supposed to be a light segment focused on her upcoming film. Scarlett had done countless interviews over the years and was well known for staying composed, even when faced with repetitive or shallow questions. She took her seat at the table, smoothing her black blazer as makeup artists made final touch-ups under the bright studio lights. 5 minutes to air, a production assistant called out, breaking the low hum of backstage chatter. As Scarlett glanced toward the host table, she noticed Joy Behar flipping through her note cards with unusual intensity. Something felt off. Joy wasn't chatting. Joy wasn't casually like the others. She was locked in, serious, occasionally glancing up at Scarlett with a look that felt sharp and deliberate. Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah Haynes, and Sunny Hostin were laughing quietly among themselves, but Joy remained focused, her posture rigid, her attention fixed. The contrast was noticeable, and even Scarlett's publicist, standing just out of camera range, shifted uneasily. Whatever Joy had planned, it didn't look like the friendly banter they'd agreed to beforehand. The theme music rolled, the audience applauded, and the cameras swept across the studio as Whoopi delivered the familiar welcome. When Scarlett's name was announced, the applause grew louder, warm and enthusiastic. Scarlett smiled and nodded appreciatively, but Joy's smile barely moved, stiff and forced, like it was part of a script she didn't enjoy reading. "We're thrilled to have Scarlett Johansson with us today," Whoopi said, gesturing toward the guest. "She's here to talk about her new thriller, but I have a feeling we might cover a little more ground too." Scarlett responded politely, thanking the hosts and expressing how happy she was to be there. That's when the tone shifted. "Well," Joy cut in sharply, her voice slicing through the moment like a blade. "I'm sure the audience wants more than just a movie promo. There are some serious issues surrounding your recent career choices, and I think they deserve to be addressed." The temperature in the room dropped instantly. Scarlett's publicist stiffened off camera. This wasn't what had been discussed, and everyone in the studio could feel the tension spike. Scarlett kept her posture steady, her voice controlled, though a subtle edge crept in as she replied that she wasn't sure what Joy was referring to and asked her to be specific. Joy leaned forward, eyes gleaming with anticipation, clearly enjoying the moment. She launched into accusations about Scarlett taking roles that others believed she had no business playing, suggesting a pattern of inserting herself into stories that weren't hers to tell. The implication hung heavy in the air, and the other hosts exchanged uneasy glances. Sunny looked visibly uncomfortable, while Sarah attempted to make eye contact with Joy, silently urging her to change course. Scarlett paused, inhaled deeply, and relied on years of media training to respond calmly. She explained that she approached every role thoughtfully and always aimed to act with respect and authenticity. Respect and authenticity, Joy repeated with open skepticism. From her seat, she accused Scarlett of opportunism, suggesting she was taking roles that should have gone to others who shared the characters' backgrounds. The accusation landed hard, and the audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Whoopi attempted to step in, sensing the conversation was veering into dangerous territory, but Joy shut her down without hesitation. She insisted this was exactly the conversation that needed to happen, and accused Scarlett of being part of the problem while sitting right there at the table. Scarlett's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed steady as she pointed out that representation was important. Yet, ambushing someone during a promotional interview wasn't the right way to have that discussion. Joy laughed dismissively, calling it journalism, and implying that if Scarlett couldn't handle tough questions, she shouldn't be there. The word sweetheart slipped out in a condescending tone, and it hung in the air like a slap. For the first time, Scarlett's polished composure cracked slightly. She made it clear she could handle difficult questions, but she wouldn't tolerate being lectured by someone who entered the conversation with a clear agenda instead of a desire for real dialogue. The studio fell nearly silent as Joy bristled, her voice rising as she defended herself, claiming she was holding Scarlett accountable rather than tossing soft questions. Scarlett leaned forward, pushing back firmly, telling Joy to ask real questions about the craft, the industry, and the work itself, rather than manufacturing a viral moment at her expense. The audience stopped breathing, the crew froze, and the energy in the room turned electric as Joy's face flushed red, completely unprepared for the level of resistance she was getting. The confrontation had crossed a line, and everyone watching knew it, and this was only the beginning. Joy's face tightened as the silence stretched on, and it was clear she hadn't expected Scarlett to push back so directly. The tension thickened, almost visible, as Joy straightened in her chair and raised her voice just enough to reclaim control of the room. Or so she thought. "Excuse me," Joy snapped, her tone sharp enough to make several audience members flinch. "Are you seriously accusing me of chasing ratings right now?" The disbelief in her voice barely masked the anger boiling underneath. Scarlett didn't hesitate. She met Joy's stare head-on, her expression calm but unyielding. She explained that if this had been intended as a serious discussion about representation, she should have been informed before the cameras started rolling, not blindsided in front of a live audience. Doing it this way, Scarlett said, made it feel less like dialogue and more like spectacle. Sarah tried to step in again, suggesting they shift toward a broader conversation about how the industry has changed over time, but Joy cut her off instantly. She was no longer interested in moderation or balance. Joy insisted she wanted Scarlett to explain why she felt entitled to take any role without considering the impact on marginalized communities. Scarlett paused before responding, locking eyes with Joy as if measuring every word. She calmly said Joy was making sweeping assumptions about her values and decision-making based on incomplete information. That only seemed to fuel Joy further. "Incomplete information?" Joy scoffed loudly. She waved a hand dismissively and pointed to Scarlett's career, calling it a clear pattern and implying that someone had to step up and judge those choices. The weight of that statement slammed into the room. The other hosts looked horrified, the audience squirmed, and even the control room seemed to hesitate. Neither woman moved, neither backed down, and the atmosphere grew unbearable. "So you've appointed yourself the judge of my choices?" Scarlett asked slowly, her voice deliberate and heavy. She questioned what qualified Joy to sit in judgment, asking directly about Joy's background in acting and the sacrifices she herself had made in the name of representation. Joy's face shifted from red to deep purple as she responded defensively, insisting she didn't need to be an actor to recognize behavior she considered problematic. Scarlett leaned back slightly, her tone cooling as she explained what she found truly problematic. A host publicly shaming a guest without doing even basic research into their actual positions or charitable efforts. Joy snapped back, saying this had nothing to do with charity. That was the moment Scarlett's voice rose for the first time, cutting through the chaos as she pointed out that if Joy had done her homework, she would know about years of support for organizations promoting diversity in film. She would know about roles turned down and voices amplified. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Scarlett continued, asking directly whether Joy knew any of that at all. The implication was clear. This wasn't about progress or education. It was about moral superiority and choosing a target. "How dare you?" Joy shouted, her voice shaking with anger. Scarlett didn't retreat. She gestured around the table, questioning whether this was truly a panel discussion or simply the Joy Behar show, asking whether the other hosts were participants or just decorations in an ambush. Whoopi attempted to regain control, urging everyone to slow down and breathe, but Joy shut her down again with such force that even Whoopi recoiled. Joy accused Scarlett of playing the victim and dismissed her objections outright. Scarlett laughed bitterly, acknowledging her privilege without hesitation. She admitted her success and opportunities, but made it clear that privilege didn't cancel out her right to basic respect. It didn't justify a character attack based on assumptions. Joy stood up abruptly, her voice rising to a near scream as she insisted she was demanding accountability. Scarlett stood as well, matching her presence but not her volume. She explained that accountability wasn't what was happening. This was hostility disguised as virtue. Production assistants began signaling frantically from off-camera. Audience members pulled out phones, recording every second as the confrontation spiraled. The other hosts looked frozen, unsure where to look or how to intervene. "You want to talk about performance?" Joy yelled, accusing Scarlett's entire career of being an act. Scarlett stepped closer to the table, her composure visibly cracking as she admitted she was performing, but performing patience and civility in the face of an attack launched under false pretenses. Joy shrieked that her criticism was legitimate, but Scarlett fired back that real criticism involved listening. What Joy was doing, she said, was making accusations and becoming angry when Scarlett refused to confess to sins Joy had already decided she was guilty of. Sarah tried one last time to redirect the segment towards Scarlett's film, but Joy slammed the idea down instantly. She pointed at Scarlett and declared they weren't moving on until she acknowledged the harm she'd caused. Scarlett stared at her in disbelief, asking Joy if she could hear herself. She pointed out the irony of accusing someone of causing harm while actively trying to destroy their reputation on live television. Joy shouted that this wasn't personal. It was about justice. Scarlett laughed without humor and challenged that claim, saying justice didn't look like ambushing a guest who came in good faith. Justice didn't look like bullying masked as activism. When Joy slammed her hand on the table, the sound echoed through the studio, jolting everyone present. Scarlett didn't flinch. She told Joy plainly that if she didn't want to be called a bully, she shouldn't act like one. The words landed hard. Joy froze, stunned into silence, her mouth opening and closing as she searched for a response. When she finally spoke, her voice dropped low and dangerous as she turned toward the production staff and ordered, "Get her out of here!" The room erupted in murmurs as Scarlett turned slowly. Disbelief etched across her face. She questioned whether she was really being removed for refusing to agree with Joy's assessment of her character. Joy doubled down, accusing Scarlett of disrespect and refusing accountability. Scarlett scanned the table, meeting Whoopi's apologetic gaze, Sarah's tearful expression, and Sunny's downcast eyes. "This is unbelievable," Scarlett said quietly, her voice carrying through the studio. She pointed out the absurdity of being invited, attacked, ignored, and then removed for not submitting. Joy called for security again, her eyes locked on Scarlett. 2 guards appeared hesitantly at the edge of the set as the audience buzzed with shock. Scarlett straightened her posture and calmly stated she didn't need an escort. She could leave on her own terms. She turned to the audience, thanking them for witnessing what had just happened and urging them to remember it. Applause began to rise as she walked toward the exit. But Joy couldn't resist one final jab, shouting after her that walking away was what she always did when called out. Scarlett stopped cold. She turned back slowly, and the expression on her face was no longer polished or restrained. It was raw, focused, and unmistakably serious, causing even the security guards to step back. And with that, the entire studio held its breath, knowing something even bigger was about to happen. Scarlett remained standing near the center of the set, the applause fading into a tense, uneasy silence as the weight of the moment settled over everyone watching. When she finally spoke again, her voice was calm, but there was no mistaking the edge beneath it. "This didn't need to happen," Scarlett said slowly, her eyes moving across the table and then toward the audience. "This could have been a real conversation, one that actually helped people understand the issue better." She explained that discussions about representation mattered deeply, but they required honesty, preparation, and mutual respect, not surprise attacks designed to corner someone. On live television. Joy had already disappeared backstage, but her absence only made the moment heavier. Scarlett pointed out that walking away didn't erase what had happened. The audience had seen everything: the interruptions, the accusations, the refusal to listen, and the decision to silence instead of engage. Whoopi shifted in her chair, visibly uncomfortable, and admitted that the segment had gone completely off the rails. She acknowledged that it wasn't how interviews were supposed to work, and apologized again for letting it spiral so far. Sarah nodded silently, and Sunny avoided eye contact, the tension still written across her face. Scarlett accepted the apology, but made it clear that apologies after the damage was done didn't undo the harm. She explained that moments like this didn't just affect celebrities, they shaped how public conversations happened everywhere. When people with platforms chose confrontation over dialogue, it sent a message that shouting was more powerful than listening. The audience listened closely, some nodding, others visibly shaken. Phones remained raised, recording every second, already knowing this footage would spread far beyond the studio walls. Scarlett took a breath and continued, saying that accountability wasn't about humiliation or forcing someone into a public confession. Real accountability meant asking hard questions and being prepared to hear answers you might not agree with. Anything else, she said, was just theatre pretending to be activism. The room stayed quiet, the kind of quiet that follows something people know they can't unsee. Scarlett thanked the audience again, not for choosing sides, but for paying attention. She reminded them that attention was power, and how they used it mattered. As she turned toward the exit again, the applause returned, stronger this time, mixed with cheers and a few shouts of support. The security guards stepped aside, no longer necessary, and Scarlett walked, past them without looking back. Behind her, the hosts remained seated, stunned and unsure how to move forward. The cameras lingered just long enough to capture the aftermath: the empty chair where Joy had been sitting, the strained expressions, the sense that something irreversible had happened. Within minutes, clips flooded social media, headlines exploded. Some praised Scarlett for standing her ground with grace and restraint. Others defended Joy, claiming she had simply asked uncomfortable questions. The internet split instantly, with no middle ground in sight. But what unsettled viewers most wasn't the argument itself. It was the way power had been used when words failed. Calling security, ending discussion and walking off didn't look like strength to many watching. It looked like losing control. By the end of the day, producers issued vague statements. Network insiders leaked conflicting accounts. Damage control spun into overtime. Yet no statement could fully explain away what millions had already seen with their own eyes. Joy Behar had wanted a confrontation, and she got one, but not the outcome she expected. Scarlett Johansson didn't raise her voice, didn't insult, and didn't retreat quietly. Instead, she exposed how quickly moral authority collapses when it refuses to listen. And that's the part that lingered long after the applause faded and the studio lights dimmed. Because if someone as experienced and powerful as Joy could cross that line so easily, then what did that say about the rest of televised debate? The uncomfortable truth viewers were left with wasn't about casting choices or film roles at all. It was about ego, control. And what happens when public conversations stop being about understanding and start being about winning? And once that line is crossed on live television, there's no editing it out, no rewriting the moment, and no walking it back. Only the question of who people believe crossed it first, and why. It was allowed to happen at all.